The sun was barely up when I trudged down to Willow Creek, my fishing rod slung over my shoulder, expecting another quiet morning by the water. I'd been coming to this spot in Pine Hollow, Oregon, for 3 years, ever since I moved here at 38, chasing a simpler life after decades of guiding anglers and studying freshwater ecosystems. The creek had been my sanctuary, its gentle ripples catching the dawn's light, fish darting beneath the surface like secrets waiting to be caught. But that morning in June 2024, everything changed. The air hit me first, sharp and bitter, like someone had spilled a vat of industrial cleaner. Then I saw them. Dozens of trout and perch floating belly up, their scales glinting dully in the early light. The water was streaked with unnatural turquoise, swirling like spilled paint. I froze, my tackle box slipping from my hand. Someone had poisoned my creek. I'm Ethan Carter, a fishing guide and conservationist who spent half my life learning the language of rivers and lakes. My dad taught me to fish when I was a kid, back when we'd spend summers on streams just like this one. A healthy waterway is alive, Ethan, he'd say. If the fish die, something's deeply wrong. Those words echoed in my head as I stared at the devastation. This wasn't a natural die-off from heat or algae. The chemical stench and those vivid blue streaks screamed copper sulfate industrial grade, the kind used by pros to kill algae blooms. Someone with access and know-how had done this deliberately. But why? And why here, in a quiet suburb where the biggest drama was usually a neighbor's untrimmed hedge? Before I could process the scene, I spotted something odd taped to my mailbox, a violation notice from the Pine Hollow Homeowners Association, signed by its president, Margaret Voss. It demanded $200 for environmental damage caused by my fishing, dated the day before the fish started dying. I read it twice, my stomach twisting. I'm the guy who releases every fish under regulation size, who picks up litter left by others. How could my fishing kill an entire creek? The HOA handbook, which I'd actually bothered to read when I moved in, laid out clear rules, written warnings, 30-day correction periods, hearings before fines. Margaret had skipped every step. This wasn't a mistake, it was a setup. The predated notice meant she knew the creek would be poisoned before it happened. My jaw tightened as I realized I was being framed. Margaret showed up an hour later, her heels clicking on the pavement, her sleek blazer and fake smile making her look like she was selling million-dollar condos instead of running a suburban HOA. At 50, she had the polished air of a real estate mogul, her leather portfolio clutched like a shield. Maybe if you didn't treat our creek like your personal playground, Ethan, we wouldn't have this mess, she said, her voice dripping with mock concern. I gestured at the dead fish. You think my catch and release killed these? I've been protecting waterways for 15 years, Margaret. She shrugged, unfazed. All I know is, we never had problems until you started fishing here. Besides, this creek won't be our problem much longer. Big upgrades are coming to boost our property values. Her emphasis on upgrades sent a chill down my spine. What was she planning? I started noticing things I'd overlooked. Fresh dirt near the creek's edge, new pipes running underground toward the neighborhood. Someone had been working here, and those turquoise streaks weren't random. They were heaviest near the northern bank, where the poison had clearly been dumped. This was no accident, it was a calculated strike. 2 days later, Margaret called an emergency HOA meeting with barely a day's notice, breaking the rule requiring a week's warning. I went anyway, curious to see how far she'd push her power. The community center was tense, with about 40 residents whispering and glancing at me like I was a criminal. As I tried to enter the main room, Margaret's assistant, a jittery woman named Clara, blocked my path. Sorry, Mr. Carter, but due to the environmental investigation, you need to sit in the back. I held my ground. All residents have equal access to meetings, Clara. That's in the bylaws. Margaret watched from the podium, smirking like she'd already won. She launched into her speech, all polished menace. We're here because one resident's reckless behavior has created a health hazard for our community. She didn't name me, but every eye turned my way. I have evidence suggesting this individual deliberately sabotaged our water to dodge responsibility for his fishing. The accusation hit like a punch. She was framing me as the poisoner. Then she held up a document, a pledge for me to sign, banning me from fishing and admitting to environmental damage. Buried in the fine print were references to upcoming development opportunities and necessary contamination documentation. It wasn't just about silencing me. It was about clearing the way for something bigger. I stood up, voice steady despite my racing heart. Bylaws require an environmental study and resident vote for fishing restrictions. You can't ban me without due process. Her smile turned icy. As president, I decide what's best for our property values, Mr. Carter. Maybe you should consider moving somewhere more suited to your hobbies. Then she slipped. During the heated arguments, she whispered to Clara, but her voice carried. Get the development paperwork ready by Thursday. We need that contamination report for the city permits, and the timeline's moving up. My blood froze. Development? Contaminated water documentation? This wasn't about fishing, it was about destroying the creek for profit. After the meeting, I overheard neighbors asking about construction timelines and property value boosts. Margaret had been quietly rallying support for a secret project. But one ally emerged, Nathan Brooks, a former HOA board member who'd quit over clashes with Margaret. He stood up, calling for independent water testing, earning nods from several residents. Margaret snapped. Your opinions aren't relevant anymore, Nathan, revealing a vindictive streak that shocked the room. That night, I lingered, pretending to organize my notes while eavesdropping. Margaret and Clara stayed behind, whispering about an accelerated timeline and a developer pushing for faster action. By the time they figure it out, it'll be too late, Margaret said, her laugh cold as ice. I ducked out, heart pounding, realizing this was bigger than an HOA power trip. The next morning, Nathan called, voice tight. Meet me at City Hall, Ethan. You need to see something about our water system. And watch your back, Margaret's got more allies than we thought. At City Hall, he showed me water maps tracing the creek's flow to every home's drinking supply. If the creek was poisoned, we were all drinking it, Margaret included. Could she really be so greedy she'd risk her own family's health? Desperate for proof, I snuck into the HOA office at midnight, jimmied the lock with a credit card, and found Margaret's desk littered with damning papers. Permits for a luxury waterfront resort, environmental reports needing contamination evidence, and emails with Cascade Properties Incorporated going back months. She'd been planning this long before the fish died, even contacting water treatment firms for algae control services code for professional poisoning. Footsteps overhead forced me to snap photos and slip out just as security arrived. The next morning, a sheriff's deputy served me with a lawsuit from Margaret, claiming harassment and illegal surveillance, demanding $6,000 and a restraining order. My neighborly wave to Mrs. Lynn, who lived near the creek, was met with a cold stare. Rumors spread that I was the troublemaker who poisoned the water to frame others. Even my tap water started tasting metallic, a sickening reminder of the spreading contamination. Nathan faced backlash too, accused of taking bribes to back me. We were both outcasts now, but he didn't give up. He showed up at my house with a manila envelope, hands shaking. I couldn't sleep after those water maps, he said. Look at this. Emails revealed Margaret took $60,000 from Cascade Properties to fabricate contamination evidence for city permits on a tight deadline. This was fraud, maybe even a federal crime. Then my phone rang. Margaret's voice was venomous. Stop poking into HOA business, Ethan, or things will get messy. Your property, your reputation, your legal standing. The threat hung in the air as I hung up, shaken but resolved. We fought back with a public water testing event, organized with my friend Caleb Turner, a water safety expert. We planned a community picnic with EPA-certified equipment to expose the truth in front of everyone. Margaret countered with her own independent consultants, delaying our setup with fake regulatory demands. As families gathered, tension crackled. Kids played, unaware of the stakes, while adults whispered about whose tests to trust. Margaret announced, when these results show contamination, we'll need immediate remediation. Then she accused me of breaking into HOA property, showing blurry security footage to paint me as a criminal. My heart sank, me credibility was crumbling. Caleb's team worked fast, their analyzers humming as Margaret's consultants ran parallel tests. After 2 agonizing hours, Caleb held up his tablet. Copper sulfate levels are 18 times EPA's safety limits, with toxic metals like lead and mercury far beyond safe drinking levels. The crowd gasped. Parents clutched their kids. Mrs. Lynn's voice broke. My son's been sick for weak stomachaches, headaches. We've been drinking this. Fury spread as families connected health issues to the water. Margaret's consultant tried to downplay it, blaming seasonal variations, but Caleb shut him down. This is industrial-grade poisoning, not natural. Only licensed professionals could access these chemicals. Nathan seized the moment, holding up the emails. Margaret took $60,000 to fake this contamination for a resort deal. A paralegal neighbor confirmed the email's authenticity, calling it fraud and a conflict of interest. Margaret's composure shattered. "Ethan rigged the samples," she screamed, but her voice cracked. In a desperate bid to prove the water was safe, she stormed to the creek's connected fountain, drank deeply, and collapsed within minutes, vomiting and convulsing from her own poison. Paramedics rushed in as the crowd watched, stunned. A mother whose child had been hospitalized said coldly, "Now you know how my daughter felt." Karma had spoken. EPA agents arrived, badges flashing, explaining that deliberate water contamination carried up to 10 years in prison. Residents, led by Mrs. Lynn, launched a class action lawsuit. Margaret faced federal charges, lost her real estate license, and was removed as HOA president. Nathan took over, passing bylaws for transparency and water monitoring. Cleanup began, projected to take months. Margaret pleaded guilty, facing probation, a $60,000 fine, and restitution that would bankrupt her. The creek, now a protected space, became a symbol of our community's fight. Standing by the water months later, casting my line, I felt peace return. The truth had surfaced, like it always does. But questions linger. Would you have drunk from that fountain to prove a point, knowing it was poisoned? Could you forgive a neighbor who endangered your family for money? How far would you go to protect your home? Drop your thoughts below, hit that like button, and subscribe. You're just getting started with stories that'll keep you on edge.